I've always come up a dollar short and a day late. When I started making headway here, well, guess who came out in the '80s around here and just took over the nation?
Oh,
George
George
Strait,
Strait. Yeah.
handsome, sings okay, got a great band. I was kind of okay looking, and I could sing okay, but we played the same honky tonks.
You're listening to the Mae Out West Podcast.
Howdy, Mabuhay friends. Today's guest is a Texas music titan with more than 5 decades on the bandstand, a 3-time AWA Male Vocalist of the Year, a multi-time Entertainer of the Year, and a longtime leader within the Texas Western swing tradition. I recently had an opportunity to have a telephone visit with Billy, and I reminded him how we almost met. Well, kind of anyway. This is Billy Mata.
Where did we meet? Sacramento?
Billy's first guest was a gig in Sacramento, but our paths actually crossed much closer to his home turf. Back around 2012, when I was working at the sheriff's office, I fell in love with his album Domino Effect. I would listen to it over and over while sitting in traffic. Later that year, I was at a taqueria in the Fort Worth Stockyards, there to see Johnny Bush. I look up from the window and I see Billy and one of his players walking right past us. To a music fanatic like me, it wasn't just seeing a local artist. It was like seeing Elvis in the flesh, but like with a cowboy hat. Once I reminded him of that evening, the memories of that specific fundraiser for TCU started flooding back.
Oh, I think we played somewhere. That's what it was. We played somewhere in the Stockyards, and then Johnny was in town. We played some sort of fundraiser for TCU. Anyways, it was and I think Dave Biller was playing steel guitar, and gosh, I can't remember who else was on the band at that time, but Ronnie McCann, excuse me, on the drums, and gosh, who was playing bass? Was Justin playing bass? Justin Trevino? Gosh darn, I wished I could have met you.
Billy's sound is unique because it just isn't 3 chords and a cloud of dust. It's pretty sophisticated. He told me that his greatest vocal teacher wasn't a country singer at all, but a jazz legend whose elocution and smoothness became Billy's gold standard.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Nat King Cole was my idol, my vocal idol, because I learned a long time ago, people want to understand what you're saying, and elocution, is important. Your pronunciations, and he not only sang it like that, but if you watch the video of Nat King Cole, the way his mouth worked, that's how he was so clear, and that I just think that was one of my teachers. Okay, he didn't know it. He was a teacher of mine, but he's one of my teachers. And one that I learned from, and the smoothness. He didn't have to holler or blow out his voice to make it happen. He just was so smooth, and then you go from that aspect to, say, Ray Price and Johnny Bush, who in their younger years we used to belt out these songs in a high register range. I mean, and that's fine and all, but eventually we get old and our voices, our voices can't do that anymore. It's like anybody else. That's like you can only play professional sports of any kind for so many years before it's time to not do that anymore. And so yeah, that's one of the things. You have to learn your limitations, and you have to pace yourself. And that's what I do with what I do. That's why I'm able to do what I'm still doing 50 years later. Okay, I pace myself, but yet I still give 110% as much as I can every show.
That comparison to pro sports is spot on. In a world of high-performance athletes, Billy is essentially the Tom Brady or LeBron James of Western swing, right? I mean, with different politics, but he maintains his status at the top of his game for 50 years by mastering his craft and knowing exactly how to pace himself. This is sound advice for all creatives, and it's exactly what Billy is filled to the brim with. wisdom and words of encouragement for the artist community. With 5 decades under his belt, most people would be looking for an exit strategy. But Billy told me he believes the moment you run out of fresh ideas is the moment you have to hang it up. I asked him what specifically keeps that fire burning after 50 years.
The minute you stop with fresh ideas is the minute you have to stop playing, in my opinion. It's just, you know what I'm saying? It's just my 50 years of doing the music. I'm just doing the stuff that I grew up on. The stuff that I love and the passion that I have for it.
So how did his musical journey begin anyway? Well, not on a stage, but in a living room. Introduce the country the way a lot of us are, with cold, hard cash.
I started out, my very first song I fell in love with was, I was 5 years old when it came out, and it was Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash. And I would sing along to the song on the radio. And my father noticed it, and it was years later when I was going to the local convenience store, when I would sell Coke bottles. We used to sell soda bottles for money and cut grass and stuff like that. We would go to the convenience store to get candy at 11, 10, 11, 12 years old. And there was this little honky-tonk beer joint that was between I had to pass by it to get to the convenience store, right? Well, those doors were blasted open, and you could hear that jukebox out in the parking lot. And this song kept on coming on. Someone was putting nickels in that jukebox and playing the song over and over. And it was called Jim, Jack, and Rose by Johnny Bush. And that's what caught my ear. That fiddle, that steel guitar, that voice, that high register voice. And I thought, man. So I started listening to the local radio stations. All my buddies at school, they did. And I fell in love with the old Conway Twitty country songs of that era, Mel Tillis, Ray Price. That's how I learned. And I learned it was after that I've learned the roots of it all. When I got into the Bob Wills and Tommy Duncan and all that stuff. I was never big into the hillbilly or Hank Williams. I'm not saying I don't like it. I was never big into it because it wasn't this area of Texas was big into their own little thing with the Ray Price and Johnny Bush and Bob Wills. See, if I was born in southeast United States, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, that would be a different story. I'd be more of a Hank Williams, that sort of thing. Lefty Frizzell. Although Lefty was not, he started out, pretty much like Hank, but, kind of found his own way. But that's where it all blended together for me. And I wanted to be, all of that. And then my freshman year in high school, here comes Asleep at the Wheel playing this Bob Wills stuff, and a bunch of long-haired guys wearing cowboy hats and boots and making it swing like crazy. And I said, oh my gosh, this is it right here. But it's a more complicated, as you know, it's a more complicated music to play because it's not just 3 chords and a cloud of dust. It's a lot of jazz chords and improvisational playing and singing. So that's what makes it challenging. And in order to do it, you have to have the right people in your band to do it.
In 2008, Billy took on what he calls an albatross, a massive 3-volume tribute to the voice of Western swing, Tommy Duncan. I wanted to know why he committed years of his life to a project that was more about history than a paycheck.
Well, it was the hardest, the most, how do you say it? The biggest albatross I could take on. I could have cut 10 albums selfishly of stuff that I like or songs written by people or whatever. But I felt like Tommy Duncan never got his due as a vocalist. And I felt like it can't. Now, Billy Mize did a really great tribute, a really nice tribute. I got the chance to, well, I couldn't talk to him directly because he had his stroke, and I had to submit some questions to him, and he would get back with me through somebody else. I was blessed to have been able to do that, and of course meeting Bob Wagner, who wrote High Country, who played guitar for Tommy at one time, and I think he's still alive. He's still living in California. So I all this stuff I went through. I just thought, if I'm going to do it, I got to put it epically, like the Last Time album. Oh, to me, it's the best Western swing album ever made, outside of the originals. Okay. But for me, I said, I'm not going to top that. There's no way I can top that, but I could get close. And of course it didn't sell a lot as much as I wanted it to, but I think it's one of those things that will go down in history one day. When I'm dead and gone, someone's going to discover that and say, wow, listen to this stuff. Boy, listen to this story. Listen to Herbie Remington talking about his rooming with Tommy Duncan. Listen to Johnny Gimbel's story talking about this, Leon Roush, all these guys that I was blessed to have these guys on my trilogy. I mean, how else can I go out? I mean, if I died today, I did that, and I got a chance to do that and associate myself with legends, So I'm truly blessed.
As a fan, I could say that we are blessed too. The Tommy Duncan trilogy box set has become a Sunday supper rotation staple in my house, a perfect example of sophisticated swing that brings a sense of joy and this human contact and takes us back into a time when things just seemed more romanticized, something that technology just can't touch. I have teenagers who know the words to Maiden's Prayer because of this particular album, and my mom swears that Billy Mata is just as incredible as Perry Como and just as handsome as Matt Monroe. But despite the elegance of the music, Billy is the first to tell you that the road was never as smooth or easy as, it sounds on the record. His career has been a 50-year pendulum of ups and downs, defined by the frustrations, the politics, and the persistence required to stay true to the roots when others might have simply just thrown in the towel. Through it all, Billy Mata's commitment to the tradition has remained steadfast, and he's kept a sharp sense of humor about the whole ride. It's that raw, honest perspective that has fueled his most daring endeavor to date, an unfiltered look behind the neon lights and the bandstand at what it really takes to become what he calls a 50-year overnight sensation.
I've always come up a dollar short and a day late. In the 80s when I started making headway here, well, guess who came out in the 80s around here and just took over the nation? George Strait.
Yeah.
Handsome, sings okay, got a great band. I was kind of okay looking, and I could sing okay, but we played the same honky tonks, okay? So I was always, it's kind of like that guy that just doesn't make the football team, the pro team. He gets cut on the last cut day or something, and just numbers away from being on a team that could have gone and done something with. You know what I mean? But it's not just that. It's all kinds of other things. I thought when I was 15 years old, I thought people would say to me, I said, there's never been a Hispanic country singer before. And I said, well, I never thought about it either, but maybe I'll be the first. Well, 2 months later, Johnny Rodriguez comes out. But I look at it from a different angle there too. Johnny was only 19. I was 15, 14 or something when he became popular. Well, being that popular, that quick, that big a deal, it didn't do favors for his life as much as people would think, because that was a lot to handle. That was just too much to handle. And I mean, he did well. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he had lots of opportunities, but the issue is, if what if that was me? How would I have handled it? How would I probably wouldn't done any better. I probably would have done worse. I probably would have been, you know, uh, died in somebody's hotel room with someone else's wife or something stupid like that. Just that's how stupid we guys are when we're young like that, okay? And some of us don't grow up till we're 40 something years old. I mean, luckily I'm in my late 60s, so I've finally grown up. But you understand what I'm saying? So I look at those lost opportunities as, okay, I wasn't supposed to be, because maybe it's supposed to happen this and this and this. Something else is supposed to happen. And so I think, and I'm a man of faith too, okay? I really truly believe that I've really been blessed to be able to continue singing at the range I'm singing, because there's something in the works for me. So my overnight sensation's on the way.
Billy jokes that his overnight sensation is finally arriving, but he views that 50-year climb as proof that slow and steady, and not being found in a hotel room with someone else's wife, wins the race. He sees his lost opportunities of the 80s not as setbacks but as divine protection, believing that he was kept from a path that he wasn't yet ready to handle. And how powerful and relatable is that, right? Billy also understands that personality is like a competitive edge. Because let's be real, some acts have the personality of dry bread. But when you're in the Billy Mata and the Texas tradition ecosystem, you're going to find that he and Donna Sue make huge efforts to stay in contact with people. Maybe it's the way he was raised, his Texas roots, or just being an ambassador of Western swing. But Billy refuses to let any kind of algorithm manage his legacy. So from the bandstand to those personal 4 a.m. birthday wishes on Facebook, he treats his fans like family because he truly means it. And, maybe that's part of the secret of his success.
I think people in general, they probably think that when I'm on Facebook and I wish people happy birthday, I try to do it right at midnight, okay? But when I'm playing, I can't, because I'm playing, and sometimes it's 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning before I can settle down and wish somebody a happy birthday. And I wonder if people think that this is some sort of automation thing doing it. No, it's me, because I really mean it. You took the time to be my friend on Facebook or wherever it is, and I'm it's your birthday. You made it around the sun another year, So I want to make someone's day in any way possible. So that's just my feeling about that.
While Billy spent years documenting the past, he's starting to see a future of Western swing reflected in a new generation. It isn't just a museum piece, it's a revival. He sees it in the LBJ-style hats coming back into fashion, and in the crowds of young people learning how to shuffle just like their grandparents did.
Well, I think it's pretty good. I mean, there's a lot of young artists. The thing I've been seeing lately is a lot of young folks, guys and girls, learning how to play steel guitar and fiddle. Well, you can't play steel guitar on some of the stuff that you hear on mainstream radio. So that means there's an interest for it, okay? And I think it'll never die. It'll fade a little bit. Just like I said, there's always the peaks and valleys. I could tell you 15, 20 years ago, you couldn't go anywhere without playing a lot of Western swing. Now it's not as prevalent as the honky tonk stuff, which I'm good, because I like it all. But I really think that there's a future for it still, and there's certain artists that are getting away from that red dirt scene. Poetry songs, which are non-danceable, and I don't mean that as an insult. I really don't. They're great songs. They're good stories, but they're not danceable. And these guys that play these acts that come in, they play at dance halls. People want to dance at dance halls, or they should. And I think young folks have forgotten. They've been on their phones so much they've forgotten how to ask a girl how to dance, or hey, would you like to dance? I mean, that's how I would go to the dances as a teenager, not knowing how, but I would watch people so I didn't look like a freak because I was standing by the bandstand listening to the music. That was why I went. But while I was there, I might as well dance with a girl, okay? Socially, being social is just a thing that's wrecked everything. The lack of being social, and I'm hoping that when people do get interested in music and they see these old videos of people dancing, especially people, they see their parents dancing on Facebook, at a dance somewhere, and they'll think, they'll laugh at first, but then they'll have a few kids and they'll say, let's go dancing like mom and dad used to, and then they see that, and then hopefully that springs it up again. That's why this stuff never dies, because somebody's going to bring it back up again. Oh, and a perfect example, my oldest daughter is 34, and my youngest daughter is 24, and one in between is 32. And that generation was different than the generation prior to them, because it seemed to me that they found interest in, and not because they were with me or because I was their dad, but because their friends were that same way too. They decided. I'm sorry, car alarm's going off. They decided that they would expand their horizons. I mean, yeah, they would hear whatever the boy bands of their times were, but then they would see these infomercials at night because they would stay up late at night with their friends, right? And they'd hear, "Please help me, I'm falling in love with you." You can get all these great hits by Hank Lachlan and Patsy Cline. They hear all this stuff and it's just new to their ears, and they think, "Wow." And it's black, and of course it's black and white, so their curiosity is up, just like them for the first time seeing a rotary telephone. Okay, so that kind of thing, curiosity is always going to get the best of all these young folks, and especially that generation of my kids, when they were kids. Okay, and it was so amazing. And then when my girls became teenagers, my two older ones, they used to say, "Dad, can you take me to Sam's Burger Joint?" This is this little place in San Antonio where they had Monday night, they had swing night. And I thought, swing night? And I thought, please tell me that's nothing to do with something else. And I thought, nah, okay. And then I realized it was a music joint. Okay. And I said, oh, okay. So I went. And of course, the bands that were playing there were either rockabilly or they played big band swing. And I thought, how cool is this? These young folks are all learning how to swing dance. I'm talking about like their great-grandparents did and their grandparents did. Okay? So to me, that was the neat thing, okay? And it's the same way with clothing. It's like the popular hat today is the open road LBJ style. When I was growing up, we wouldn't be caught dead in that hat because our grandfather wore it or father wore it, no, LBJ wore it. So, but that being said, it's come around that all these young folks are wearing it, okay? And it's because it's an old look that's come back around. So fashions, like music, will always come and go,
During the war in the Philippines, Billy's father was an army nurse on a hospital ship tasked with feeding POWs who were too brutalized to trust their meal. They were starving, but they feared poison more. His father did not argue. He just got to work. He innovatively mixed powdered eggs and canned spinach, and that simple aroma wafting through the ship did what words couldn't. It made those men feel safe enough to eat again, and it earned him a promotion to private first class and gave Billy his ultimate life lesson. Put your nose down, prove yourself through service, and let God be your judge.
Yeah, it's amazing what brings people together, and brings peace amongst other cultures, and sometimes it takes war to do that. Battling in the trenches with your fellow soldiers. My dad was in the army, but he was an army nurse, and he served on the ship in the Philippines, a hospital ship, and
Wow.
they picked up a lot of POWs, and he had to nurse them back, and he made private first class by making getting the POWs to eat. I mean, they were so skittish because the Japanese would poison them and brutalize them, and so Dad told me. I never knew these stories until later on, when Dad was nearly dying. He would tell me, well, I mean, about 10 years before he died, but he would tell me little bits and pieces here and there, and I never knew how he got private first class until, and I'll tell you this real quick if you don't mind. He couldn't get the POWs to eat, and if you know anything about how food was in the mess area, the canned spinach is the ugliest thing to come out of a can. It's all green and watery, and he couldn't get these guys to eat. Those guys thought it was that my dad was trying to poison them, and of course they had powdered eggs and this and that. That's regular. That's the meals ready to eat back then. And so Dad decided he was hungry, so he's going to make him some spinach and eggs. So he kind of innovatively mixed the eggs and, the powdered eggs, that is, not the eggs, and the spinach, and mixed it together. And the aroma of the food started wafting through where all the POWs were laying. And Dad was sitting there eating, and all of a sudden these guys come up and they wanted to eat some of his food. And so Dad had to make more and more and more and more. And so he finally got them to eat. And the commanding officer said, "Hey, how did you do this?" And he told him, "I just was hungry and I decided to make some spinach and eggs." And of course, commanding officers are not going to be pat you on the back and say, "Good, attaboy." He just said, well, that's great. And so next thing you know, he's private first class instead of private Mata, So, and that's just the way it was, And I think that was a great story that my dad told me, because it goes to show you how far we've come from where we were.
When you ask Billy what he hopes to be remembered for, the answer isn't title or tally. It's really how you show up. He talks about the business as a constant seesaw and about the choices you make balancing the shift. He's always been clear on his. If he can't give his best, he'd rather step away entirely than go through the motions. For him, legacy lives in the everyday decisions, taking care of the band, keeping things honest, and making sure the music still means something to the people who gather around it. And that philosophy has guided him throughout his career. And it's advice shaped by time, not just theory.
Joy is one, and being from Texas and being part of dance halls all my life, playing weddings, bringing people together. I've played a lot of weddings. I've played for a lot of people that met at my dances that got married. I hope I'm an integral part of what keeps them together. I know that's you can't help what goes on in everybody else's life, and all I can do is try, but I also want to be remembered as someone who gave it all, someone who wanted to please everybody, and treated his bandmates fairly. And I think I have. I've had a bunch of good musicians through the years. Most of them have all stayed with me for as long as they could. Some of them left me for better opportunities, not for bad situations. I've probably fired maybe 5 people in my whole 50 years. Okay, I've had a lot of people walk away because of better opportunities, or what they thought was, or I've had a lot of people retire, and some people passed away, or they eventually did. I'm talking in regards to recently my longtime guitar player, David Waters, who played a lot on that trilogy. He played guitar on that Tommy Duncan trilogy. He had lost his wife, and he lost his will to play. I mean, he eventually retired, and then a year later after he retired, he passed away. So, I think it's a testament to how I treat people with respect, that they stick around, even though, you understand this business. It's up and down all the time. 1 minute country music's hot, 1 minute Western swing's hot, 1 minute it's rockabilly, next minute it's, and then, you it's a seesaw. And sometimes you got to play along on that. But there's a lot of ups and downs, and sometimes there's a lot of peaks and valleys. There'll be times where you're working too much, and then there's times where you're not working at all. And that's what makes it tough to keep a band together, because some musicians, that's all they want to do is play. Well, that's fine if you could do that, but you'll if you have to jump ship every time the certain ship you're in is sinking a little bit, then you might find a place to land, but are you going to be happy, right? Are you going to be happy because you had to take this job because they don't play the kind of music I like, but it's a job. I think that's what I weigh. I'd rather, if I had to sweep floors or flip burgers, to temporarily get through a valley to get to a peak, I'd rather do that, because I'd rather stick to my guns and do what I love to do. Like with my music, I like my music to be influential, but I also, if I ever do get to finish a book, and people, I would hope it would inspire other people to not give up.
To learn more about the ambassador of Western Swing, Billy Mata, in action, visit BillyMataEntertainer.com. For more stories and deep dives into the heartbeat of the West, you could join me at MaeOutWest.com. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you guys next time.